By this weekend, a majority of the does throughout much of the whitetails range will have been bred. Now remember, I said a majority. If you look at the bell-shaped curve, and that's going to change shapes depending on nutrition and adult sex ratio and some other factors, but let's just throw a number out there. Let's say 25–30% of the does or more are likely still not bred. The does that haven't been bred yet, well, they're probably either really low on nutrition, or man, they're early born fawns that just aren't mature enough yet to reach puberty, or some does have been bred and they didn't become pregnant, so they're going to cycle back through. I share all this just to say the good news is there's still going to be some bucks chasing does this weekend. In fact, the rut may be about as intense in some areas as it was last weekend, which was like building up to the peak of the breeding season, and that's because there's fewer bucks out there. There's not as much competition for the does. You got to think about it, like in the state of Missouri, gosh, almost 80,000 deer were harvested right off the bat, and a big percentage of those were bucks, and that pattern's kind of true throughout much of the whitetails range. So bucks have been harvested during somebody's freezer, or they've been injured, there's been a vehicle accident. There's not as many bucks now as there was a week ago throughout America, literally. Even though there's fewer does receptive, there's fewer bucks to tend those does. The result of that equation, fewer bucks, does still being receptive, is rut hunting strategies are still in play this weekend. Those strategies are the same as they were last weekend. Travel corridors, places you can see into bedding cover. You want to see far. If you're hunting with a firearm, man, you got the Winchester out there. You don't want to be limiting yourself to 30 yards unless you've got a deer really patterned. You want to be able to cover the extent of your ability to use that weapon. If you're a 200-yard shooter, then man, you don't want to just be seeing 80 yards. You want to get somewhere where you can cover some ground. Another factor that's starting to come in play more and more, and it's going to be more this weekend than it was last weekend, is bucks start needing calories. They kind of don't eat much during that peak of the rut and right building up to it. They're spending all their time seeking receptive does, but bucks will lose about 30% of their body weight during the rut. Wild free-ranging bucks. You think about, boy, they're just going up and down hills or running and trying to avoid hunters and coyotes and find a receptive doe and fighting with other bucks. They literally can lose about 30% of their body weight. Now let's put that in scale. Let's take a 200-pound buck. He's 200 pounds, let's say in September. And now, or even a little later, maybe Christmas or so, he's down to 140 pounds. Talk about a weight loss program. The bucks aren't trying to lose weight, so they're going to be going some groceries. They may be stopping for longer than they were a week ago in those feeding areas, or they may just be focused on some food. Some bucks have been injured during the rut, and they're focused on food and recovery. So hunting quality food sources, especially close to quality cover, is a good strategy. All this is based on very sound biology, but you got to remember, deer, like humans, is based on, averages. The average guy in America is X feet tall and weighs X pounds, but there's, guys 7 feet tall and guys 5 feet tall. So we look at averages, but with deer, there's not as much of a variance as there tends to be in humans when you look at the behavior. This weekend, you may choose to hunt where there's 2 or 3 does that are receptive all at once, and they're just buzzes of activity around you. You're thinking, man, this is the peak of the rut. Well, that's because you happen to be where a bunch of does are receptive. Or you may sit there and see nothing but bucks just feeding, or no bucks at all, and you say, man, the rut's over where I am. And neither of those are probably true, unless you're, way south Texas, Alabama, and the rut hadn't started yet. You got to remember that individual observations do not paint an accurate picture of deer herd overall. Another factor to consider this weekend is there's been a lot of hunting pressure in most areas throughout the whitetails range. So if you know an area that for whatever reason hasn't been hunted much, or a food source no one's hunted yet, that's a good strategy just based on the amount of hunting pressure that's occurred by mid to late November. I hope you have time to go hunting this weekend, and that these strategies help you put some venison in the freezer. But even if you don't have time to go hunting, or maybe you're tagged out already, I hope you get outside and enjoy creation, and more importantly, that you're intentional about seeking the Creator's will for your life. Thanks for watching Growing Deer.